Tom Brokaw began his career as a television newscaster in the Midwest. In 1965, he moved to Atlanta as a news editor and anchorman and was a contributor to the Huntley-Brinkley Report. In the late 60s, he joined NBC News in California, covering such stories as Robert F. Kennedy's assassination and Ronald Reagan's California gubernatorial campaign. By 1973, Brokaw had become White House correspondent for NBC News during Watergate. Soon, he was anchoring Today on NBC. And then from 1983 to 2004, he was anchor and managing editor of NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. His book, The Greatest Generation, became a bestseller in 1998. Retiring in 2004, Brokaw continues to write and undertake special assignments for NBC.
I'm a pure product of working-class families in the Great Plains of what was known as the Dakota Territory. My father was a 10th child. By the time they got to him, no one was paying a lot of attention. He was a school dropout when he was in the 3rd grade. He went to work for a Swedish immigrant in town, and they moved houses and hauled water and dug wells and did everything from the time he was 8 or 9 on. Times were not ever easy economically. There wasn't a lot of excess and no luxury items whatsoever. If my dad could build it, he would. My mother quit saying that she needed a new ironing board or a new table because he'd go out to the garage and build whatever she needed. I was kind of the full-blown high school student. I was a 3-sport athlete, and I was the president of the student body, and I began to take it all for granted. And in the spring of my senior year, I began to kind of party a little too much, and unfortunately I continued my partying ways for the first 2 years of college. I thought I was getting away with it, frankly. But it went on long enough that the woman to whom I am now married, and I was seeing her at the time, wrote me a very dismissive letter and said, "Don't bother to call. It's pretty clear you're not going anywhere in life, and I'm just not interested." So that was a wake-up call. I wanted to be a network correspondent. To travel the world and be on television and cover politics was my great passion. My first job after graduating from college, I got the job in part because the news director said he'd never met anybody at my age who knew as much about American politics as I did or cared as much about them as I did. I was in California and having a very good time. I did the local news, but I always knew I wanted to work at some point in Washington. Watergate was underway, so I came and dove into Watergate. I once described it as learning to ski in an avalanche. It was a tense time. It was a grave constitutional crisis. And every day you'd worry about not doing the wrong thing because the stakes were so high. So I learned a lot from that.
Tom always had that sense of adventure, and he was aware that life had a lot of opportunities and he wanted to participate.
If you want to have a successful life, you've got to get your boots on the ground and get your hands in the dirt and spend nights in scary places, because that's where most of the world lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, Horatio Alger Association member Thomas J. Brokaw.